The Galactic Empire, the most powerful force in the universe, had ruled over countless star systems for millennia. Their fleet was unmatched, their technology far beyond anything other civilizations could dream of. They believed they were unstoppable, and for good reason. No enemy had ever dared challenge their might. But all of that was about to change. A strange signal came from a sector of space long considered unexplored. It was a faint signal, almost like a whisper in the vast emptiness of space. The Empire's intelligence officers didn't think much of it at first. It was probably a glitch or an old signal from a forgotten world. But as the signal grew stronger, the officers became curious. Something was out there. The Empire's warships, led by Fleet Commander Vashti, set course for the source of the signal. The crew was on edge, not knowing what they might find. The Empire had scoured the galaxy for years, making sure no one could challenge their rule. But now this signal had appeared out of nowhere, and it was calling them. The question was, who or what was on the other side? As they arrived in the uncharted sector, the fleet came to a halt. In front of them was an enormous warship, an unfamiliar design that didn't match anything the Empire had ever seen before. Its shape was sleek, almost too perfect, with sharp edges and strange symbols that none of the Empire's experts could identify. The ship was hovering in space, completely still, almost like it had been waiting for them. "Is it hostile?" Vashti asked, her voice cold and commanding. Her officers didn't answer right away. They were all just as confused as she was. The ship seemed too advanced for a civilization that the Empire had never encountered. How could anyone build such a thing, especially in a place like this? Without warning, the ship fired. The blast came from nowhere. A massive energy beam that hit one of the Empire's warships directly. The ship exploded in an instant, its hull torn apart by the force of the blast. The rest of the fleet reacted quickly, but the damage was done. The Empire's best ships were nothing against the power of this unknown warship. "Retreat," Vashti ordered, but it was too late. Another blast came, this time hitting 2 more ships. Panic set in among the Empire's forces. No one knew what this ship was, or who was inside it, but they knew one thing for sure. They were facing something unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. The human warship, silent and deadly, seemed to mock the Empire's power. In the face of this terrifying new threat, the fleet commander had no answers, only fear. The Galactic Empire was afraid, and they had never been afraid of anything, until now. After the shocking attack on their fleet, the Galactic Empire was in chaos. The once mighty armada of warships was now reduced to smoldering wrecks, scattered in space. The enemy ship, this strange, terrifying warship, hovered just beyond the reach of the surviving Imperial forces, its guns still aimed at the sky. The damage was unimaginable. 3 of the Empire's most advanced ships had been destroyed in the blink of an eye. The fleet commander, Vashti, couldn't comprehend what had just happened. "Regroup now," Vashti barked, trying to maintain control over her panicking fleet. She looked out into the void, where the enemy ship remained motionless, almost daring the Empire to come closer. Her mind raced with questions. Who were these people? How could they possess such powerful weapons? And why hadn't they attacked again? The Empire's remaining ships slowly maneuvered into position, forming a defensive line around Vashti's flagship. Each ship was heavily armed, carrying enough firepower to annihilate entire planets. Yet their enemies had made them look like toys. The warship before them appeared silent, as though it had no intention of striking again. But its power was undeniable. The damage it had done was enough to shake even the most seasoned of the Empire's commanders. "Send out a communication," Vashti ordered, her voice tight. "We need to find out who they are and why they're here." The communication was sent, but it was met with silence. No response, just the cold, empty void of space. As hours passed with no further action, the tension in the fleet grew. Vashti paced across the command deck of her flagship. She couldn't afford to sit still. Not now. She needed answers. And yet, all she had was uncertainty. Then, unexpectedly, the human warship made a move. Its engines powered up, and slowly it began to move toward them. Vashti's hand gripped the armrest of her command chair. "Brace for impact," she ordered, but the warship didn't attack. It simply positioned itself at the heart of the fleet, just far enough to keep its distance. A long, heavy silence settled over the fleet. The Empire's warships surrounded the mysterious human ship, all weapons trained on it. But no further shots were fired. "Why won't they engage?" Vashti muttered to herself. "Why are they waiting?" Then, the answer came in an unexpected form. A voice suddenly crackled through the communication system. It was clear, calm, and spoken in perfect Imperial language. "Empire Fleet, this is Commander Leo Hawk of the human warship. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to take what is ours." The words sent a chill down Vashti's spine. The humans were not afraid. They knew exactly what they wanted. But the real question was, what was it that they wanted from the Galactic Empire? And why did they think they could take it? Vashti stared at the screen, the gravity of the situation sinking in. The Empire had always been the... Commander Leo Hawk stood on the bridge of the human warship, his eyes fixed on the display screens. He had not been on this mission to make allies. The plan had always been simple: take what was needed from the Galactic Empire. They had no reason to negotiate, not after what they had learned. Behind him, his crew moved quietly, handling their tasks with precision. There was no panic, no fear, just an unshakable focus. Hawk had trained them for this moment where the Empire would finally realize the humans were no longer weak. They were not to be underestimated. "Commander, the Empire fleet is holding position," reported Lieutenant Marla, her voice calm but alert. She looked at him, waiting for the next order. Hawk turned, a calm smile crossing his face. "They're unsure. Good, let them think. Time is on our side." He paused for a moment, watching the shimmering stars outside. "Prepare the communication channel. Let's see if we can get some answers." The silence on the bridge was thick as Marla set up the transmission. Hawk's eyes narrowed as he spoke into the microphone, his voice steady and clear. "Empire Fleet, this is Commander Leo Hawk. I repeat, we are not here to negotiate. Our purpose is simple. You are to surrender all control of this sector to the human race. Resistance is futile." The words echoed through the cold, sterile communication systems of the Empire's fleet and across the stars. Hawk knew the Galactic Empire was not easily frightened, but he also knew they had underestimated humanity. No one had expected the humans to become such a force. The warship they commanded had been built from the ground up, using technology scavenged from ancient alien ruins, along with their own advancements. It was unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. As the message ended, Vashti, the Empire's fleet commander, seethed with anger on the other side of the line. "You dare demand control over us, human," she snapped. "We are the Empire. You are nothing but ants beneath our boot." Hawk didn't flinch. His response was smooth, unbothered. "If you think so, prove it. But I think you'll find your resources are not enough to stop us." He leaned back in his chair, hands folded. "Our warship is just the beginning." On the screen, Vashti's face twisted in disbelief. She couldn't fathom how such an unimportant species could possess the power to threaten an empire that had stood unchallenged for centuries. She had seen humans as weak, insignificant creatures, primitive, flawed. Now she understood that she was wrong. The human warship was a deadly machine, and Hawk was no ordinary commander. Hawk knew the warship would be the beginning of something much bigger. The Empire would soon learn that humanity was no longer the underdog, and they would either accept that reality or face the consequences. "We will not bow to you, human," Vashti snarled, her eyes burning with rage. "You already have," Hawk said softly. "You just don't know it yet." Fleet Commander Vashti's face was a mask of fury as she sat in the command chair of her flagship, the Relentless. The human warship had dared to challenge the might of the Galactic Empire. And worse, it had succeeded. The loss of 3 of their finest warships in a single strike was a blow that would not be forgotten. No one, not even the most powerful beings in the galaxy, had ever dared to stand against the Empire like this. "We cannot let this stand," Vashti muttered to herself, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. "Prepare the fleet. We will crush them." Her officers moved quickly, following her orders without question. The Empire had never been challenged like this, and they were not about to let some unknown human force undo centuries of dominance. The human ship, with its mysterious technology and its impossible weaponry, had to be destroyed. Vashti's fleet had been regrouping since the last battle, and now they were ready to strike back. Their warships, some of the largest and most powerful in the galaxy, were lined up in formation, weapons fully armed. The human warship had shown its strength, but the Empire had resources beyond what the humans could ever imagine. They would not falter this time. "We move in full force," Vashti ordered, her voice cold with determination. "We will break through their defenses and show them what true power is." The Empire's fleet engaged their engines, and in a matter of moments, they were speeding toward the human ship, their weapons primed for destruction. Hawk watched calmly from the bridge of his ship as the Empire's massive armada charged forward. His crew remained just as calm, each person knowing their place in the unfolding battle. "Prepare for incoming fire," Hawk said, his voice steady. "Let's show them what humanity can do." The human warship's engines hummed with power as it activated its shields. The Empire's ships fired first, their energy beams slicing through space with terrifying speed. But the human warship was ready. Its shields absorbed the blasts, not a single shot breaking through. "Return fire," Hawk commanded. With a single word, the warship's weapons came to life. The Empire's ships were met with a hail of energy blasts, each one striking with deadly precision. But despite their superior numbers, the Empire's fleet was unprepared for the speed and power of the human warship. It moved with grace, dodging their attacks and countering with force that made even the most seasoned commanders on the Empire's side hesitate. Vashti gritted her teeth as her flagship shook from the force of another blast. "Full power to forward shields," she ordered. "Keep pressing forward. We can't let this human ship get away with this." But the human warship wasn't running. It was fighting, striking back with a power that made the Empire's finest ships seem slow and sluggish. The battle was intense, a chaotic dance of energy beams and starships, with the human warship at the center, its weapons roaring through the darkness of space. Vashti watched helplessly as one of her destroyers exploded in a fiery ball of debris. She couldn't believe it. The humans were holding their ground, and they were doing it with a force that was impossible to ignore. The Empire's pride was being shattered right before their eyes. But even in the face of this new and terrifying power, Vashti would not back down. The Empire would find a way to destroy this human ship, no matter the cost. As the battle between the human warship and the Galactic Empire raged on, Commander Leo Hawk watched the conflict unfold with a calm focus. His ship, though powerful, was not invincible. They had taken out several of the Empire's ships, but their fleet was still vast, and the human warship couldn't keep up this pace forever. The fight was far from over. Hawk paced the bridge of his ship, thinking about the next move, while the Empire was busy launching attack after attack. He realized something. They were wasting precious time. There were other ways to weaken the Empire, ways that didn't involve destroying their entire fleet. If he could find the right allies, perhaps they could shift the balance of power in their favor. On the other side of the galaxy, the Empire's rule had been harsh and unforgiving. Entire planets had been conquered and exploited, their inhabitants suffering under imperial control. Some of these oppressed factions had started to look for any sign of hope, anything that could overthrow the Empire's tyranny. And now, humanity was that sign. Hawk knew it was time to reach out. While the Empire's attention was focused on the warship, There were others in the galaxy who might be willing to lend their support. But how could they make contact without drawing the Empire's suspicion? "Lieutenant Marla," Hawk said, his voice low but clear, "prepare the comms. I'm going to reach out to some unlikely allies." Marla nodded, sensing the change in direction. "Yes, Commander." Hawk watched as Marla worked swiftly, setting up a secure transmission. Soon, the screen flickered to life, revealing a familiar face, though Hawk hadn't expected to see it this soon. A member of the Zornan race, a once proud species now scattered across the stars, forced to live in the shadow of the Empire's brutality. "This is Commander Hawk of the human warship," he said, his voice firm. "I know your people have suffered under the Empire's control. I offer you a chance. Join us, and we can overthrow them together. We have the power to fight back." The Zornan on the screen, a tall figure with sharp, silver eyes, studied Hawk closely. His people had been enslaved by the Empire for generations, and trust did not come easily. But there was something in Hawk's voice, something that promised hope. "Why should we trust you, human?" the Zornan asked, his tone skeptical. "What if this is just another trick?" Hawk didn't hesitate. "Because we have the same enemy. The Empire has destroyed everything we hold dear, just as it has done to you. We don't want to conquer the galaxy. We want to free it. If you join us, together we can make a stand. But we can't do it alone." The Zornan paused, and for a long moment, no words were exchanged. Then, slowly, the alien spoke. "We will fight with you. The Empire will fall." The connection was cut, but Hawk could see the shift in the room. The Empire had underestimated humanity. And now, they would find that humans had the ability to inspire others to rise up. With the Zornan and possibly others joining their cause, the Empire's hold on the galaxy was weakening. It wasn't just the humans who were fighting now. The galaxy had begun to unite, and it would not be long before the Empire found itself overwhelmed by the very forces it had once controlled. Commander Leo Hawk stood in the command center of his warship, staring out into the vast, starry expanse. The battle against the Empire was far from over, but something had changed. The humans weren't alone anymore. They had the Zornan now, and rumors of other oppressed factions joining their cause spread like wildfire. The Empire, once an unstoppable force, was beginning to crack under the pressure. But despite their growing strength, Hawk couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. There was still so much he didn't know about the warship that had become humanity's greatest weapon. He had always believed the ship was just a product of human ingenuity, something they had built with their own hands and technology. But now, as the battles grew more intense and the stakes higher, Hawk had begun to wonder, had they really built the warship themselves? He had to know more. "Lieutenant Marla," Hawk called, turning to his second-in-command, "I need access to the warship's archives. Something's been bothering me about the ship's design. We need to go deeper." Marla raised an eyebrow, but she didn't question him. She nodded and began working on the console. The ship had been designed with layers upon layers of hidden systems, most of which Hawk hadn't even seen. But this was different. He felt an instinct pulling him to uncover the truth. After a few moments, the screen flickered, revealing encrypted data that had been locked away. As Marla decrypted the files, Hawk's heart raced. What he was about to uncover could change everything. The truth was far more complicated than he could have imagined. The warship wasn't just a human creation. It was a hybrid, a mix of human technology and something much older, much more powerful. Hidden deep within the ship's systems were alien artifacts, technologies that had been scavenged from ancient ruins across the galaxy. These weren't just random pieces of forgotten technology. They were carefully integrated into the ship's design, making it a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Hawk leaned closer to the screen, his mind racing as the data revealed more and more. The ship was capable of much more than just destructive power. It was built with an intelligence that could adapt and evolve, learning from every battle, every encounter. It wasn't just a ship. It was alive in some way, constantly evolving with every fight. "This changes everything," Hawk muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Marla looked over at him, sensing the gravity of what he had just discovered. "What does this mean, Commander?" "It means," Hawk said slowly, turning toward her, "that we're not just fighting with technology. We're fighting with something that has a mind of its own. And it's not human." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The realization settled in. The ship had been designed not just to fight the Empire, but to be a tool for something much greater. It was humanity's secret weapon, but it wasn't entirely under their control. The warship was more than just a symbol of human ingenuity. It was a force of nature. And if they were going to defeat the Empire, they would have to learn how to use that power to their advantage. The human warship hovered at the edge of the Imperial-controlled sector, its powerful engines humming in the quiet void of space. Commander Leo Hawk stood on the bridge, his eyes focused on the Empire's fleet, which was massing in front of them. The time had come. The Empire would either fall or fight back with everything it had. Hawk turned to his crew, his expression steady. "This is it. The Empire is throwing everything they have at us. We've seen their power. Now it's time to show them ours." The crew nodded in silent agreement. They had come a long way, and each person knew the stakes. The warship they commanded wasn't just a tool of destruction. It was the future of humanity. They couldn't afford to fail. The Empire's fleet loomed in the distance, its massive warships shining like beacons in the coldest space. It was an overwhelming force, but Hawk wasn't intimidated. They had the advantage now. The Empire might have the numbers, but humanity had something else. The will to fight, to protect their future. "We're outnumbered, but we're not outmatched," Hawk said, his voice carrying over the tense silence. "Remember what we're fighting for. This is more than just a battle. This is the fight for freedom. For every world the Empire has crushed, for every family they've destroyed. We're here to take it all back." With a final glance at his crew, Hawk turned back to the front, watching as the Empire's ships began to advance. They weren't holding back now. The battle had begun in full force. The human warship fired first, its weapons tearing through the void. The Empire's ships retaliated with a volley of blasts, but the human warship was ready. Its shields absorbed the incoming fire, and it moved with speed and agility that left the Empire's massive ships struggling to keep up. Hawk had been right. Human ingenuity and determination made all the difference. The battle was fierce, with explosions lighting up the darkness of space as both sides clashed. The Empire's fleet, despite its superior numbers, couldn't land a decisive blow. The human warship moved quickly, striking fast and hard, targeting weak points in the Empire's defenses. Each attack was calculated, every move precise. Vashti, the Empire's fleet commander, watched with growing frustration. Her ships were taking heavy damage. Her fleet, once feared across the galaxy, was faltering against a force they had never seen before. "This cannot be happening," she muttered under her breath. She had always believed the Empire's power was unshakable, that no one could ever rise to challenge them. But now, faced with the might of humanity's warship, she was beginning to question everything she had once known. "We need more firepower," Vashti shouted, her voice rising in anger. "Throw everything we have at them. Don't hold back." But the Empire's fleet was already starting to crumble. One by one, the ships began to fall, the once unbeatable force now struggling to keep its ground. It wasn't just the firepower of the human warship that made the difference. It was the spirit of the crew, their will to succeed, to fight for something greater than themselves. As the Empire's ships scattered, Hawk watched with a grim satisfaction. The battle was almost over. They had won. And with this victory, the tide of the war had turned. The Empire was no longer the uncontested ruler of the galaxy. The humans had proven that they could fight back. And this was only the beginning. The space around the human warship was a vast sea of debris. Wreckage from the Empire's fleet drifted slowly in the wake of the battle, the remnants of once mighty warships floating lifelessly. The starlight above was dimmed by the smoke and dust that lingered in the aftermath. The human warship had emerged victorious, but the cost had been high. Commander Leo Hawk stood on the bridge, watching as his crew worked tirelessly to assess the damage. They had won, but the war was far from over. This battle had been a turning point, but the Empire would not give up easily. They had lost this fight, but they would return, and they would fight again. "We've made a mark today," Hawk said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his bones. "But this is just the beginning." The crew nodded, aware of the weight of his words. They had done the impossible. They had faced the full force of the Empire's fleet and lived to tell the tale. But Hawk knew that in the galaxy, power was always shifting. One battle did not win a war. They had to keep moving forward. "We need to take the fight to them," Hawk continued, turning toward his officers. "We've shown them we can defeat them in battle, but now we need to hit them where it hurts. We go after their resources, their planets, and their strongholds. This is how we win the war." Lieutenant Marla stepped forward, her eyes narrowed in determination. "We'll need more allies, Commander. The Empire won't fall just because we've beaten their fleet once. We need more than just a few ships. We need an army." Hawk nodded. "We've already made contact with the Zornan. There are more out there, other planets, other species that have suffered under the Empire. We'll rally them to our cause. The galaxy is not as united as the Empire wants to believe. There are cracks, and we will exploit them." The message was clear. The victory they had achieved in the battle was only the start of something much bigger. The human warship and its crew would continue to push forward, building alliances, striking at the heart of the Empire's control, and freeing those who had been enslaved for far too long. But Hawk knew that the Empire would not go down without a fight. They would come back stronger, angrier, and more determined than ever. This was the way of war. But the humans were ready. They had proven that their resilience and creativity could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. As the warship slowly turned its course toward the next battle, Hawk stood tall, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. The road ahead would not be easy, but it was a road worth traveling. Humanity's future was no longer in the hands of the Empire. It was in their own hands now. The galaxy was changing. The Empire's reign was beginning to crumble, and a new force was rising. And this time, it wasn't the Empire that would be feared. It was the humans. The days following their victory were tense. Commander Leo Hawk sat in the warship's command center, his eyes fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. The map showed the remnants of the Empire's once dominant control, now beginning to fracture. The human warship had delivered a decisive blow to their fleet, but the battle had only scratched the surface of the larger war. Humanity was rising, but the Empire had yet to truly feel the weight of their rebellion. "Commander," Lieutenant Marla's voice interrupted his thoughts. "We've received word from the Zornan. They've started to rally other factions. We might have the support we need for the next phase of the operation." Hawk nodded, turning toward her. The Zornan were just the beginning. Over the past few days, his crew had been in contact with several other oppressed species, all eager to see the Empire's rule crumble. He knew that in order to win, they needed more than just a few allies. They needed to unite the galaxy. "It's not enough just to have allies," Hawk replied, his voice steady. "We need to send a message. The Empire needs to know that their power is slipping. We can't wait for them to come to us again. We need to strike first." Marla nodded in agreement. "And where do we strike, Commander?" Hawk stared at the map, his mind running through the possibilities. The Empire's key strongholds were heavily guarded, but Hawk knew where their weaknesses lay. The Empire had always relied on fear to maintain control. But now, that fear was fading. It was time to disrupt the heart of their empire, cut off their supply lines, destroy their weapons factories, and free the planets they had enslaved. "We'll hit their resource centers and weapons production factories," Hawk said. "The Empire relies on these places to fuel their war machine. If we destroy their ability to produce weapons and ships, We can cripple their efforts for good. The crew, once quiet and cautious, was now energized. Hawk had always known that humanity's strength lay in its determination and resourcefulness. It wasn't just their technology that gave them an edge. It was their ability to adapt, to think differently, and to never give up, no matter the odds. Make it happen, Hawk added. The crew got to work immediately. The plan was bold, but the situation demanded it. They couldn't just play defense anymore. Humanity needed to take control, and that meant taking the fight to the Empire. Days passed as the warship and its new allies prepared for the next move. Ships were repaired, weapons were upgraded, and new strategies were developed. The once dominant Empire had underestimated the resolve of the human race, and now that mistake would cost them. In the quiet moments between operations, Hawk found himself thinking about the future. What would the galaxy look like once the Empire fell? Would humanity be able to handle the responsibility of leadership? He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. The war wasn't over, but the humans had already made their mark. The Empire had learned the hard way that humanity would never kneel to tyranny again, and this was only the beginning. The human warship moved silently through the stars, its engines humming with quiet power. Commander Leo Hawk stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the distant stars ahead. The time had come. The Empire's days of unchallenged rule were over. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was leading the charge. They had gathered their forces, and now it was time to strike at the heart of the Empire. They had already crippled the Empire's fleet, destroyed vital supply lines, and freed countless planets from its grip. But the final blow, the one that would make the Empire realize they could no longer hold on, was about to come. The Empire had one final stronghold left, a massive fortress world that served as the Empire's capital. It was heavily guarded, protected by layers of defense systems and a fleet larger than anything the human forces had ever faced. But Hawk wasn't afraid. He had seen the Empire's true weakness, their reliance on fear. Once that fear was shattered, they would fall. "We're ready, Commander," Lieutenant Marla said, her voice firm. "The Zornin and the other allies are in position. We've got everything we need for the final assault." Hawk nodded. "Good. Let's end this." The human warship, accompanied by its new allies, moved toward the capital. As they approached, Hawk couldn't help but feel the weight of what they were about to do. The future of the galaxy was in their hands, and yet there was no fear in his heart, only determination. They had come too far to turn back now. The fleet's weapons were primed, their shields activated, and every officer on the bridge was ready for battle. They had trained for this moment. It was no longer about survival. It was about making sure the Empire would never rise again. As they neared the capital, the Empire's defenses opened fire. The first barrage of energy beams lit up the dark sky, but the human warship dodged them with surprising agility. Their speed and precision were unmatched. The Empire's ships struggled to keep up, their attacks slowing as they tried to focus on the human fleet. "Fire," Hawk commanded. The human warship unleashed a torrent of energy, its weapons cutting through the Empire's defenses like a hot knife through butter. The Empire's fleet, which had once seemed invincible, was now struggling to hold its ground. One by one, their ships were disabled, their energy shields failing against the relentless assault. The battle raged on for hours, but with every passing minute, it became clearer that the Empire was losing. Their fleet was in chaos, their once proud stronghold beginning to crack under the pressure. It wasn't just the human warship they had to fear now. It was the galaxy itself, united against them. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Empire's last defenses crumbled. The fortress world, once the heart of the Empire's power, was in ruins. The human fleet stood victorious. Commander Hawk looked out at the burning capital, the galaxy's most powerful empire reduced to nothing more than ashes. He had led humanity to victory, but more than that, he had shown the galaxy that no power, no matter how great, was invincible. This is only the beginning, Hawk whispered to himself. The galaxy is ours now. The human warship, battered but undefeated, turned its course toward the stars, ready to face whatever challenges the future held. The Empire was gone, and in its place, a new age had begun. The human race had proven that no matter how impossible the odds, they would always rise.